Sit over here. I know. Take all this time. Thank you. Take all this time setting everything up for reason in your screen. No, I'm gonna sit in the audience today. Perfect. All right, Roger, everything's up here. Yep.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brighton Area Schools Board of Education meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll do a roll call here. Ms. Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Stahl? Here. Dr. Krebs?
Here.
Mr. Trombley? Here. Mr. Conley? Here. Myers here. That moves us to the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion? Moved by Mr. Stahl.
Support.
Support by Ms. Mitchell. Any discussion?
If we want to do like board reports tonight, we can do it in the work session.
That's fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. That moves us to the call to the public. Is there anyone that here this evening that would like to address the board during the call to the public? All right. Seeing none, that closes the call to the public and moves us to the for action portion of our agenda. Item A, 2019 bond, loose equipment, health occupations. Mr. Engleter.
This item covered 2 weeks ago at our last meeting, just asking for approval tonight.
All right. Do we have a motion for approval of the loose equipment, health occupations portion of the 2019 bond?
Move that on.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Conley, support by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. Next item, B, technology purchase. Nick?
So I've got 1,500 Chromebooks, and then we've got 175 teacher laptops for part of the replacement program for teacher laptops.
And this was discussed 2 weeks ago as well.
That's what it is. And it's for part of the bond purchase.
All
Scheduled
right.
bond purchase.
Do we have a motion for the approval of the technology? Moved by Mr. Stahl, support by Mr. Conley. Any discussion?
Go ahead, John.
And the purchase, again, that's going to come out of the technology portion of the bond, not general fund.
Correct.
At this time. How much is left in that part of the bond?
I'm not sure. I think we'd have to sit down and look at what's left in there.
Yeah, between 1 and 2 million, I think at this point.
Well, that's a pretty big swing.
It's trying to figure out like where we are in the timing of payments and stuff like that. So
And the amount of this purchase was how much again? I didn't look
It
at that.
was for the teacher laptops, it was 140,000. And then for the Chromebooks, it's 500,000, 520,000.
And how many Chromebooks is that?
1,500,
Okay.
$317 a piece plus $30 for
Yeah.
licensing.
And then the salvage on the ones that were taken out of service, what's the program on this, on the?
So
units
they
coming
usually,
out?
we send them to recyclers because they really can't be reused by other districts because they're used for testing. So they go out of licensing. So we usually go and we turn them and sell them to recycling companies.
Okay, and then what about the laptops?
The laptops we offer for the teachers to repurchase them. So if they like to purchase their old laptops, they have a chance to do that. Or we leave them in the district as far as replacements, parts and stuff like that.
Okay, and so if we were to sell them within the district to employees, how much do we sell them for?
The MacBooks go for $250 is what we sell the MacBooks for. And then the PCs are around $100. They want.
Right, and those are, how many years on those? These are all 5 years old?
They're all close to 5 years old at this point, yes.
All right, thank you.
So what portion of the laptops for the teachers are we replacing? So, I mean, because we're on kind of a
So we're-
replacement
Yep,
schedule. I
so we're
just want
doing
to know.
Scranton and we're doing the high school in this round.
Okay. So how many do we have at the high school altogether?
So there are,
We have 112, but I'm saying, but in total at the high school, like, so like what percentage are we looking at replacing? We're not doing them all at one
no, we're
time.
doing them all at once. We do them all at the high school.
This
at
is
one time.
everyone at the high
This
school.
is everybody at the high school and this is everybody at Scranton.
Okay.
Yep.
And then what about the elementary schools? Are they in a different schedule?
This is the last one.
Okay. And then you expect the laptops to be 5 years and the Chromebooks to be 3 years, is that?
Well, yeah. This next round of Chromebooks will be actually 6 years, close to 6 years. They don't go out of license until 2029.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions, discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 6-0. That concludes the for action portion of the agenda and moves us into the board work session portion of our agenda. We have 4 items on our agenda, the first of which is the field and building use. And there are 4 categories under that. First being the rate adjustment. Dr. Outlaw, you want to kick that off for us?
Sure. Would it be okay if I invited Mr. Thompson perhaps to sit where Mr. Reed's seat is up here? Because he was instrumental in this work and will be able to answer a lot of our questions. So while he's coming up, 2018, the board approved a building and field use chart. And there are some things in this that we'd like to bring you a revised version of this in the future. But tonight we have some like philosophical questions that we'd like to talk to the board about to help us develop the draft that we're going to bring to you for future action down the road. So Mr. Thompson led a group with our folks from Bark and others, Mr. Ingleter, myself. We looked at this. We have done a lot of research on this. We've made some recommendations. And we're working towards a proposal that we'd like to bring to you, but we have some big questions that we'd like to talk to you about. So one of the questions, I guess the first question that we have on this is on this draft sheet that you see in front of you, we left the rates exactly as they were in 2018. Obviously, we have inflation and things like that. The question mark is there an interest in making an adjustment to the rates that we have? On this chart, things like 6%, 8%, 10%. Is this something that the board would like to see in the draft that we bring to you? Some rate adjustments to adjust for inflation.
So what do the fees cover?
Sure. With our fee structure, we're just trying to recoup some of our operating costs depending on the facility. I'll use the pool as an example. Not only do we have the lights and the chemicals and those type of things, we're never going to recover all those costs. But you have to staff it with lifeguards and those type of things. So when we're looking at these rates, that's really what we're trying to do is just recoup some of the costs. We're never going to make everybody whole. We never have. I don't know that we ever will.
Thank you.
But again, the discussion right now on the table is, would we as a board like to have the administration come back with some recommendations for increases? Is that correct?
That is correct.
I'm all for that.
So make adjustments?
Yes.
Any concerns with that?
Yeah, I get big concerns with it. I wouldn't raise anything. You've got more federal and state funding and then history that came into the school district going to the general fund. And in this situation, I think we should let it sit for a year or two because we have other things that people are dealing with in the general public. And how do we tax them some more? They've been taxed a lot. I have a card that came in the mail. It says that said that the state has put more money into public education than history. Let me take a list here. The largest K-12 investment in state history, and you're going to raise fees to the parents?
Well, this isn't, most of these categories, as I understand it, are not parents of our district or like direct student. Like, for example, category or group D are requests or use by all other organizations not expressly identified. So there's other counties. So the question really, the reason, as I understand it, these fee schedules are set up is that the district isn't subsidizing the use by other organizations. So it's really more addressed to, where if other organizations are using our facilities for these fees that have been established,
Understood.
should we look at, how inflation has increased those
Well, it's
fees?
definitely our costs are higher. I'm sure the supply.
Absolutely.
So that's not a question with me, but if in fact these other operations that are wanting to use our schools are other local community operations, be it Selkra, be it whatever, we need to be cautious. These are all still our community members. So that's just my position on it. I don't disagree that costs have gone up exponentially on everything that we do. So, the board may have a different flavor to that, but that would be my concern. If we're taxing our residents that are in Brighton Township with their programs higher, or we're going to charge more for that, I wouldn't support that. If somebody comes from, out of district or out of state and wants to rent the school, I have no problem with that, obviously. But I'd be on the side of not doing anything. So that's my position.
How do we compare to other districts?
John or Mike, do you have any feedback on that?
I would say we're probably behind because we haven't touched rates in 5 years. Typically, in our business, those rates are at least every couple of years getting adjusted by the business office or the finance people or those type of things. We haven't touched them since 2018. So,
And then what about the pool? Are we charging for the pool?
Yeah, lap swimming, it's on the usage chart, but that's one of the questions. That's question 4 that I had, is I wasn't here for this. I'm just getting a little bit of history on, we're not administering that line of it right currently. And that's one of the questions I have for the board.
I see the note that says we'd increase it $1 per year through 7 of 21. I imagine that happened and it's not? Or?
no, that did not happen. At the time in 2018, when we last took a go at this, we were directed by the board not to charge for open swim or lap swim, same type of programming.
It just being clear, that is adult swim when we don't have kids there. That's what we're not charging for. So we're paying for all the lifeguards and supervision of the non-school times used in the pool and the strength and training. That's
Is
the
it open to
question.
everyone other than just community members too then?
What is that?
Is it open to everyone, including non-community members?
It is,
Okay.
yes.
Well, and that's where I think moving forward, if we do something, again, I don't think our taxpayers should have to pay a fee to use what they are paying taxes on to build. But I don't see someone from Heartland coming in using our pool and swimming for free because they're not paying taxes, they're not doing anything. I'd like to see someone checking to make sure, and then somewhere along the line, some type of fee set up for that type of use.
Yeah, so, I think the fee structure is there. It would just be the question mark, do we implement what's on the sheet or not? And if it's for this group versus that group, again, we're not coming in with the horse in the game. We're not coming in saying this is what we want. We want board preference on this stuff so that we can get you a good draft of a revised thing. We need to revise it because we need to include things like the new field house. We have to make some revisions. So we're looking at this holistically to see what else you want.
Right, so just to keep it in organized
Yeah.
manner, the first thing they need feedback on is, should there, given the rate structure that's already in place, and we can have further discussion about whether we change how the rate structure is set up, but do we want to give a recommendation from the administration regarding within this rate structure, whether there should be an inflation adjustment or looking at whether there should be some sort of an adjustment? That's the first question. So are we in a consensus to?
And then the draft, what we could do is we could adjust those rates and then we'll also provide the current, you'll have the 2018 version and then we'll show it so you can look to compare to see how it feels, if that works.
I have one question.
Sure.
What's the dollar value per year that we're talking about from all the money that's brought in from this that we charge for?
For rentals?
For whatever,
Yeah.
per
Mike?
account.
Boy, I'll have to get you that number. I don't
I mean, is it $100,000?
know.
Is it $50,000?
It would be 50 or less. I would,
I want everybody to think about this carefully. On a $100 million budget, the total income center from this is $50,000,
that's just a ballpark.
give or take. So do we increase that so we get more in line with reality? It sounds like no matter what we do, we're never going to hit reality. And
So if I could just suggest that we we put together our draft with what rates would look like, and then we have the default to going back to what it currently is. And then when we get to future action, you can look at it and say, it's not worth it. And we'll have all the numbers that you're asking for, John. And then at future action, you can make final revisions to it. But I don't think until we show what those would be that you would know, like 10% on, it's not very much. It's like $1 or $2 here and there.
Show up. Okay.
It's not significant. So,
I'd be more interested in seeing comparables.
okay.
Because then we can see.
That like I said, I'm just want to see what the scope of we're talking here. This is, we stroke out a check for how much were the computers just a minute ago? 700,000. Yeah.
But there's,
And we're talking maybe
So-
a $5,000 increase to something. I mean, I would be cautious in the public sides when we start raising the fees that are utility, their facilities for. I mean, they've paid a lot and they're paying continually now. Taxes aren't going down to consumers. They're paying more everything.
Is it okay if we just bring it that way with an adjustment, and then we can scale it when we get to like an official draft? The second one is more of a heads up. There is a hole in the 2018 version of it. If you looked at that, that's the one that has the A, B, C, D on it. You know, there's the two sides here. If you look in this, if you scroll all the way down to where it says, look at your baseball, softball fields down towards the bottom. Everything is by game. But if you look right below it and you look at the grass fields, you know, you'll have field for games, and then there's something for practices also. So we have some outside organizations that are renting our facilities for baseball and softball, and there's no mechanism to charge them.
And they're
So
tearing up our fields besides.
they're using it, and I think they're willing to, you know, pay the same as what we do for soccer and other sports. So it's just a hole for baseball, softball. So are there any concerns with us adding that in so it would be in line with all the other sports? Is that okay? And there'll be a mechanism in it, and so we're going to add that piece in there. So that the third one, if you look at the side of this that has the ABC and not the D column, that's the potential revised. If you scroll down towards the bottom of the page, there is some ideas for the indoor practice facility. John, do you want to just quickly talk about that?
Sure. Those rates I gathered, probably about a year ago. I did check on them about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Those are comparable, maybe just a little bit less than what the private sector, if you were at any of the private sector facilities in Novi or in Brighton here. And then they're tiered, obviously, like we've tiered everything else. So proportionally. So that's where that data came from.
And then if it's the whole facility, which is a giant facility, it's $250 an hour, you know, in the one category. But if you rent a third of it, it's a third, you know, so it could be a team approach to it. So if you think about it, you're talking about, you know, youth sports, and you might do.
So if some parents wanted to have a birthday party in there, they could pay $250 for the hour and have a birthday party inside there?
Actually, they would.
Depending on what group they're in.
Yeah,
I mean, the
depends what
Group B
group
is
you're
like a special group, but they would pay whatever the hourly rate is.
But my point is,
Yeah.
with space as precious as it is, we'd rent it for a birthday party for $250. I don't think that facility is even worth opening for $250.
Yeah, well, my guess is that hours are going to be tough to come by.
Yes.
Well, okay.
It'll be slow in the beginning.
And
as we
obviously it would
feel
have
our
to
way,
fit within
but-
our schedule, not theirs.
Correct. I don't see the private citizen rental market being a lot out there for that facility.
I'm only proposing the
But,
question.
I mean, hypothetically, yeah, just like they could rent, you know, the gym, or they could rent at the senior center.
I mean, if the birthday party is a sports party, I mean, this isn't for like, you know, this isn't for food and all that kind of stuff. This is a sports complex. So if they're renting it to have play soccer, you know, run up and down, play games and things, it's different. But I think, as John said, this is going to be scheduled out. There's a lot of demand right here in our own school system for that time. And I think it's going to be filled with Brighton area schools and BARC activities.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm just,
And I've got a question under Group A, and I should probably know this because obviously I was here when this was written, but number 5, requests for use of meetings of BAS employee associations. What associations would those be?
Where's that bill? Is that on the one that, the,
Group A,
On the D page.
number
on
5.
the one that currently exists?
Yeah,
Okay.
Group A, number 5.
You know, again, this was something, this came out in 2018.
Right,
We didn't
right.
write that,
I know.
but, yes, employees.
Then would there be some explanation then, I guess, added to this stuff as well
Yeah.
when you come back with your draft?
Sure. Yeah, what I think that is in the, contract, the BEA contract. They have access. I think that's specifically what that's referencing.
Okay, but when you come back with the draft, you'll have better explanations of these things?
Sure. That's
Yeah.
what we'd like to do. We want to just clarify
I
some
think you'll
things.
See on the news side that we had removed that.
Yeah, Group A, we totally eliminated.
Group A is
Because
school
it's all
stuff. There's
Brighton
no
school
reason
use.
to even have that on there.
So it really was redundant.
I tried to clean up some of that.
So we'll have some field house rates on it, and obviously we can talk about it when you see a draft of it. And then the fourth thing that we needed as we were looking at the development of our draft that we'll bring to you is about this fee structure. And I know we just started talking about it here, but specifically the pool and the strength training facility. The reality is that a swimming pool, John knows this, he's been an AD forever. I was an AD back in the day. You lose money on a pool no matter what you do. I mean, pools are losers when it comes to budgets, right, Mike? Am I correct? Yeah. So you're never going to recoup that. But what you do with your fees are basically set up to cover the staffing costs for the time that's there. So you have to have lifeguards, you have to have supervision, those type of things. So most districts charge, either they have membership fees or they do like a $5 drop-in or things like that for community members that maybe are using it, and then sometimes they have different fees for people that are outside of the community. In my previous district, there was one rate for people that lived in our community, and it was much lower than for people that were outside the community that weren't paying taxes. That's pretty common. But anyway, what is your preference? It is in here where we have swimming pool, like dollars, per lane an hour. We have something in there. Is this something that we want tweaked, or do we want to stay with kind of the moratorium and leave it in there? What is your preference from the board perspective?
Again, I would prefer if you're living in the city of Brighton, you're paying Brighton area school taxes, it costs you nothing because you're already paying for it in your taxes. If you're from outside of the district, then yes, it should cost something more.
I'd support that.
But just to clarify, the Brighton School District.
Yeah, if you're paying taxes in Brighton area schools.
Yeah,
That doesn't include school of choice.
correct.
One thing I always like to point out in those discussions, and again, it's the board's preference and can do what you want. The Brighton school taxpayer is paying on the bonds to build the facility, not to operate it though. And that's kind of. what
Well, hold on,
fees-
I disagree 100% because I pay taxes every year. Yes, it is to pay, but don't tell me these schools stay open without the taxpayers paying taxes.
I'm not saying that they don't bill, I'm just saying they're paying directly to the district. It goes into the larger pot.
Michael, I understand the system, but again, don't say that the taxpayers don't pay to operate these schools. Okay, because they do.
The majority of my taxes go to schools.
Exactly.
And I got a lot of them.
So the one thing that I would throw out there as well is right now, we're not real consistent in those two areas. So if you want to rent a room for a birthday party, right? Okay, we'll rent it to you for a birthday party. It costs X. So I pay for that birthday party rental for that room or that space, but yet I can go to the pool and I can go to open swim for free, or I can go to strength and conditioning in that facility and do that for free. So we're charging in some areas and we're not charging in other areas. And
But correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that birthday party rental Also, because we have to have a janitorial staff come in, even though we already have a janitorial on staff, they have to come in, spend additional time in that room, clean it, take care of it, get it ready to prep for the next day or whatever it is. Unlike a pool that we already have open, that's already operating, that's already filtering, that's already got chlorine in it.
Yeah, to some extent, that's right. But I mean, if it's not a birthday party, it could be a gym rental. It could be a classroom rental. It could be our cafeterias get rented by
Right.
a bunch.
Yep.
Those spaces get rented out for meetings of all kinds. Those are just two areas where, we have not had any type of fee associated with, unlike, we talk about room rentals, but even if you just look at our own student athletes. So we don't charge pay to participate anymore, but we still charge for transportation.
Right.
Okay? So if my daughter's getting on a bus to go to volleyball, I'm writing a check for anywhere
Right.
between 50 to $100, depending, every team's transportation cost is different. They're paying a fee.
Right.
But I can go to open swim, or I can go in strength conditioning, and it's free. You pay a $5 ticket to get into an athletic event, but I can go to open swim and it's free.
Well, and who shows up, who's the majority of the people that show up at the football game? The people in the band and the football players and their parents, right? How much does it cost for kids for band, right? Extraordinary amount of money, just like playing football. It costs
Almost.
a
That's my-
boatload of
that's
money,
my
right?
point.
And then the parents
Yeah.
still have to pay to get in to watch their kids.
And that's
What a
kind of
shame.
where I was going with it, to be honest with you, is those are just two areas within this whole scheme of things.
So I
that-
think this is this is a big can of worms that we
Right.
could talk about. And I think John's right that we are all over the map on this.
Right.
If I'm hearing it correctly, as we're looking at the fee and building structure, you'd like us to keep it the same on the chart, but currently to not exercise that part of the fee chart.
I'd just like to
For-
see you
for
come back with
residents.
something so we have something to look at and comment.
Okay. Is that okay?
I just have a question on the second page where we're talking about the indoor facility for the April to October proposed structure. It says group B, C, and D. Is that still supposed to be A, B, and C?
Yeah, it should be
Yes.
at the NC right
Okay,
there.
because it has the November to April A, B, and C with the
Yeah.
corresponding amount, and then it said C, D. I didn't know I wanted to make sure that it wasn't.
Yeah, the
referring-
proposed rates change when spring comes.
Sure.
Because there's less demand
Yeah,
to
it's
be
a-
inside.
It's a typo.
It's
It's
just-
ABC.
Right, I just want to make sure that there wasn't confusion referencing back to the B, C, and D.
Yep. Okay. So if that answers some of the questions, we can take any other feedback that you have from the board. What we'll do is we'll go back to the group. We will make a proposal as clean as possible. That's the goal, is to make it clean so that, we don't have to come back, keep talking about this over and over again. Come back, bring it back for future action. Let's poke holes in it, tweak it, whatever we need to do. And then when you're ready, I'd like to vote and then replace the current with this or revised clean version. Any other questions at all on field use or any of that?
We would look at, we're talking about this now because we would not implement any changes until the district's fiscal year changes on July 1st. So we wouldn't just all of a sudden, pull the rug out from somebody that's already booked and go, oh, hey, it's going to cost you that much more. So we're just trying to be proactive, and this would be for July 1st of next year moving forward.
Because the rentals begin quite a bit earlier for those summer facilities and things. So, Angie, you had a question?
No, I'm good.
No? Okay. Are we good on field use? I think we have everything we need. So the next one, if you don't mind just looking at this chart here, it's got fancy colors on it and everything like that. It is just a follow-up from the contingency discussion that we had probably a month ago, or maybe even 2 months ago. It was this summertime when we talked. At that, you approved certain expenditures. Some of these projects, we said no to one of the projects, but we had 2 projects on here that are in yellow that the board either wanted more information about or a little bit more time to think about it. One of them to talk about tonight are the restrooms at Hilton. That's the specific one, but I want to give you an update on the second one first. The second one there was science lab remodel. the thinking, we were talking about is like, what would the science labs of the future look like? Building off of the STEAM momentum. I've reached out, talked with some of the folks in the high school teaching staff, and we're going to engage in some conversations this month, but they've been submitting some ideas. They're energized by this, and we could talk about this later, but it depends on how much contingency we have. But I think that idea of doing this, I think is a great expenditure, and really where the contingency dollars could vary pretty dramatically. Maybe that tells us how many rooms we could do. Maybe if the contingency dollars are low, we can do 1 or 2 classrooms. But if we have a little bit more, maybe we can do more of those classrooms. But I just want to let you know that those conversations are going about what that might look like. And then the big one here is Hilton bathrooms. Mike, if you could fill in on this, that I think all the restrooms in the district have been modernized in either the previous bond or this one, other than Hilton. And the Hiltons are the original from the 1991. Is that when that building was built?
I think that's correct, yeah.
It should say up here on the wall, but I think it's 91 down there somewhere. So since 91, these are the original bathrooms?
Yep.
Okay.
This,
So,
for
yeah.
whatever reason, these were the only ones in the last bond that weren't updated. And then they weren't added to this bond when it was put together. So we were just looking to correct that inequity.
I'm absolutely for it. We've discussed it before.
I agree.
For what?
I agree.
What's that?
We need to update the bathrooms.
Well, let me ask you this. How much is it going to be to straighten the lighting out over at Hilton to start with, so it doesn't look like the hodgepodge that it is right now?
We're still waiting on that number to come in, Bill, but we've got that.
But just so everybody knows what Bill's talking about is they're putting in new light posts outdoors, and then they left all the old ones there, so those have to come out as well.
Because
So it has
the
to get cleaned up.
architect and the engineer never said remove existing, so it was never included in the bid. So again, IDI is costing us additional money. So now we have to pay what the contractor wants plus a markup per the contract. So now it's going to cost us more to have it removed because the guy never said remove existing light posts or unhook them and take out the bases. So now there's 3 different types of light fixtures out there. So what's the cost to get that straightened out in the first place?
Was so they paved around the old ones then too, right?
What's that?
They repaved around the old ones, is that the location?
Ken, I'm not even talking about those. I'm talking about the ones that are in the grass that don't even work and do anything.
They're just hanging out ornaments right now.
Yeah.
I think they should, I mean, if we're really being honest, I probably want both of them to share the cost on it, because the management group didn't catch it either. I don't-
But again,
I don't
it's
understand
per,
how you go out
the
there and
contractor bid it per the
not see
drawing.
those lights.
Hey, whoever wants to share the cost, but guess what? We shouldn't have to pay the cost.
No, I agree. That's a
Okay?
total
I don't
miss.
care who wants to pay, but it shouldn't be us.
No.
Okay?
It's a
But
total miss.
you know as well as I do, right now, it's got to come out of our contingency money in order to get it fixed. So what's that cost going to be to get that straightened out in the first place?
We don't have a cost on it yet. We're waiting for the.
Well, let's see, that's been for 6 weeks now, at least, if not 8 weeks?
I agree with you. And
So-
we're still waiting on a number from the contractor to give it to us because they've been trying to complete all the other work they had to do.
Yeah. Completing work and giving us numbers are 2 different things. Why would, so here's the next thing. Has anybody done obviously, we're waiting on the road to be laid out at Scranton, or it should be laid out by now. It's Scranton, the one from Rickett in, right? What happens if we hit a peat bog out there? What do we do?
Likelihood you will.
To me, that's what contingency money is for at this time. Now, granted, we spent contingency money, but has anyone gone out? By now, I'm assuming that road is 90% laid out. I don't know. I haven't seen anything. But, wouldn't somebody be out there maybe doing some soil boring so we know that, and again, not that I'm a construction expert by any means, but nor am I in the management company or the engineering firm. But shouldn't somebody be out there maybe doing some soil borings to see if we may hit a peat bog somewhere along the lines? Then we would know what we had to spend in contingency. And oh, by the way, when it's being bid, we could say that there's a peat bog and that X amount has to be removed. So before we get too carried away and spending money, I'd like to get the stuff wrapped up that should be wrapped up, like the lighting, those kind of things at Hilton, then move forward with some of this other stuff. Because right now, again, we don't know what's under the ground out there by any means. And we're still not done with the bond.
What is our contingency at this moment?
What's that?
What is our contingency at this moment?
I don't know for sure.
I'm asking.
Oh,
We're sitting somewhere between 2 to 3 million right now.
That's a big swing too.
No.
Surplus.
there's about $7.5 million worth of construction left. About 4 of that, 4.3 is construction work that's already been budgeted that has contingency built into it. The remaining amount is what we have left in the contingency fund. So that's roughly 3 million.
3 million. And so I guess I don't understand. Are you saying we should not consider any additional projects right now? I mean,
No, Roger, what I'm saying is we need to get what we have now cleaned up and get them correct.
there's no question.
And that's going to cost contingency money.
Sure.
Okay, just like the indoor facility. We're assuming that's going to open, that's going to operate. Well, what happens if there's a glitch somewhere along the lines, right? And it has to be, because it just can't sit there. Okay, so I'd like to get things cleaned up from this past construction season in Hilton. And then I'd like to see this road that's supposedly supposed to have been designed by now. It's been, 9 months for them to be working on it. To have somebody maybe go out and do some soil borings. You can do soil borings until the ground freezes. Let's take the path of the road. Let's do some soil borings along there and see what we have underground. If it's all sand, hey, great. Guess what?
It's not out there. It's clay. It's a mess.
Well, I know it is. That's what I'm concerned about.
Those fields.
And then once we have a determination from them, then I say we start piecing out. But here's what we can do. What are these bathrooms worth? 300 and some odd thousand? Okay, 325. So if we all agree to get the bathrooms done, which I'm in agreement of getting the bathrooms done, let's take that 325, let's set it aside.
Well, I
Okay,
think that's the point of our conversation tonight is they want to know, are we, what is our consensus, if we have a consensus? Is that a,
but here's my point.
Either one.
Here's my point. If we say yes tonight, does that mean we're going to get started on it?
I would say yes. I mean,
See, and that's where I'm going. I'd prefer to, let's agree that, yeah, we want to get them done. Let's set that 325 aside. Okay, let's try to get some of this other stuff cleaned up. And then it's already sitting there ready to go. Let's go. But maybe not spend it right now until we know for sure what's coming down the road.
On that, Bill's rested obviously tonight. Good job, Bill. So anyway, well, the key is you keep a sharp pencil on these other projects. I don't have a problem, Ken, with the idea of upgrading those, but I'm in a position to, does it require $300,000? Or can I put $300,000 in the science labs that are going to help students, right? So you can work it out where if the bond doesn't work out, you can use general fund as far as I'm concerned. You can pay for it. It doesn't have to be a bonded item.
That's true.
It fits into the bond scope though, appropriately, just like the science labs would. So we can go either way. If you run out of dough, we have money available, don't we? If we need it. So put it on the scope list to do. I think we all could agree that we'd like to have it on the scope list. And if it's going to be bond or general fund, could be determined what's left in the bond, right? Because some things have to come out of contingency by required to. It's like if that road has a $500,000 issue, right? That would come out of contingency. We don't know that yet. And have they done the soil borings? That was supposed to be done a while ago.
Not the soil borings on the path of the road.
Yeah, they're supposed to be done though, so we can have an actual cost of this thing.
But I think there's a lot of determination for a while on where the road was going to lie.
But they've had that for a few
When we
months.
did all the soil borings early on, we didn't know where the road was actually going to
You just poke some holes around.
lay. It didn't terribly long to get soil borings.
But they've known for a few months.
Yeah.
Well, again, the
So they
soil
haven't
boring
come
should
back
be
to
done on the
tell us.
path of the road.
Oh, absolutely, but they haven't come back to tell us. They have yet the
Nope.
edges to.
Nope.
So we
So-
have no idea.
So I think one thing, just throwing this out there, whatever the board wants to do on this, it seems like it's taken forever for these projects to go from getting a green light from you to getting it drawn, to getting it all done. I mean, this Scranton driveway we've been talking about seems like since I started working here. And we're still waiting for the final drawing so that we can go out for bid. And, Mike's trying to put a little pressure on to get it done earlier. But if we're going to do Hilton bathrooms, we need to get started on this so that we can get this in the queue and start planning and start drawing and doing whatever it needs.
In all fairness, they work fine. And they're working fine. They've been working fine. It's not like we are without a bathroom, right? The bathrooms
Sure.
all work. And I know Ken's idea doesn't like the way they are presented, right? You've been in there.
Oh, they stink.
So when is the point?
Urinal stink. They're kind of disgusting.
But when are we going to be at a spot, or when's the board going to be at a spot where we're going to make decisions? Let's say it ends up being $3 million that remains. So when is it that, so let's say the board waits until we're done with everything, and then it's going to be a whole nother year before.
Well, I guess, part of that discussion is, let's assume that soil borings reflect the worst conditions that possibly exist. Is it gonna cost $3 million of undercutting
Once we would get those borings, then we would know, we would have a lot better idea, plus or minus,
Sure,
what the cost would be. Right now, it's an unknown.
and I understand that. But I'm saying, even if you assume the worst case scenario from a subsurface soil conditions
What would
standpoint,
that scenario be?
I don't know, that's what I'm asking.
2,000 feet of peat moss, cut and fill.
Would that cost $3 million?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's, John's saying no, you're saying yeah. I mean, I don't know what the answer is.
None of us.
Well, neither,
Can we
right.
rephrase it? How about, since we could do it with general funds, why don't we say, go on the bathrooms? I don't care if it comes out of this or it comes out of general funds.
Go for it.
Whatever we've got available, take it. That's my.
Fine. And if we run 325 short in the bond, it'll come out of the general fund to be replaced, right? I'm good with that.
Yeah.
That's fine with that.
Fine.
Just appropriated.
I'm good with that, as long as it stays that way.
How that's appropriation.
You just, it's not, I didn't say it wasn't misappropriation, you just appropriate a few bucks, Ken, you're hanging your neck up in the line, I hope it works for you. The bathrooms better be
Well,
really
I guess
nice.
my point is we already established, I think, with the previous discussion here a few minutes ago, we have the money to do it with the general fund. So it's kind of a can't lose situation.
I don't disagree, but I'm gonna hold you guys again on this original dream sheet in 2018 or whenever it came out and said, I can't remember, it was 18, I think, which had to do with rebuilding these science labs. And everybody looked at it and said, we like that.
Yes.
We all did. Okay, so if there was money available, it fits the scope. Now, if you take and look at it this way, we're building bathrooms and we can't do science labs to help our students go forward. Now, I'm all for having good facilities, but I also want these students to have the best opportunities possible in all areas. That's my position. So, if general fund allows and we use the bond money strictly for the science lab rebuilds and the general fund pays for your bathrooms, we could appropriate that tonight and talk to Mr. Engler and do it.
Well,
I mean, just
well,
an
let's
idea.
look at it another way. Look how much it's costing us for the architect and all his goofy decisions,
This
just
has
like
been- This has been bad.
just like the towers on the HVAC units, right?
Okay, we're
And the
not done- We're
platforms.
not done with that yet. but-
Right, and that's costed us money, right?
Thousands,
Yeah.
tens of thousands.
Yeah.
So-
But getting back to the
Forward.
focus,
We can move forward and start working on designing, and then, is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay.
Well,
And your plaque is going in those bathrooms, Mr. Stahl.
Pardon?
The plaque from the boardroom is gonna go on. that page.
but
My plaque.
I'm assuming these already are somewhere along in design, aren't they?
The bathrooms, I don't think, they got skipped altogether.
Bathrooms are not.
And this is a loose number too. by
There's
the way.
nothing?
This is
No,
approximate.
they were never part of the bond scope to begin.
These are additional.
Oh, okay.
Project that they're
Right.
thinking.
Added scope.
I think Ken's idea of getting the
Fine, I'm good with it.
facilities updated is not a bad idea, but I
Right.
really don't want to miss building science labs because we built that.
Well, in your design, we'll come up with a cost, right? So that you know where we're at then. Yeah.
Good.
I'm not-
All right.
Sounds like you got it.
Okay. We're ready to move forward? We're good? All right. The next thing is very brief. Dr. Mosier and I, we've been meeting with both the county and our preschool staff over at Tot Spot. One of the things that I've shared with you is that the wait lists for these programs are getting huge at this point. And that's not just us, that's across the country. During last couple of years, a lot of the both childcare and preschool places closed across the country. They're having staffing issues, a variety of other things. So I just wanted to let you know that we are working on this. We've had several meetings on this. We're working with Janice Ramirez from Totspot on this, but we're looking at expanding a little bit. We've been looking at facility, staffing. We've been looking at, some curricular things, some assessment and things like that nature. But we'd like to come back to you in a month or so, just to give you some feedback on kind of where we're hoping to go in the future with this. There's some real opportunities here. There's more free preschool than I think that we can access through the Great Start Readiness Program. We're pretty light on that in our community as far as accessing it, and it's free preschool. And there's some real benefits to it. But anyway, we think that this is a really good area for us to focus on as a district. And we think with a few tweaks that we might be able to access or give great service to more kids and to improve our program. So yes, Angie.
A couple comments. So
Yeah.
you're saying that we have the facility, so this isn't going to be a lot of capital investment?
Yeah, so that's one of the things to come back on. There is space. There's not a lot of space. So we're going to spend some time, we've done some examination of the building, and there is space to grow. Depends on how much.
What is the prediction for staffing? Because I know that nationwide there's
Yeah,
issues
so
with this.
we've learned a lot about staffing, and we've learned about like what the credentials are of our staff. We have one approach to it, and there's some other approaches to the staffing side. We do a lot of blending of childcare and preschool. In a lot of places, like my previous district, those were two different things. Preschool was leading into, directly into the education side. And they have a different model here, which is working, but they're getting paid at a certain rate. So staffing, the credentials are they're not people that can go right into kindergarten.
So I know that the state is adding a birth decay certification.
Right.
Are we looking at certified teachers for this kind of position, or is this more preschool teachers? Okay.
Right. So I think that's one of the conversation points that we're having. We're looking at our existing staff because we have good people there. But staffing, right.
How to get them certified, because there are ways to do that. So we have people who are definitely qualified. We've been working with our students, so we don't want to not keep them. But if there's a way to get them certified to teach as well, but we would like to kind of up the ante, especially if it's going to be an instructional program versus a childcare
Right.
facility.
Okay. Thank you.
Would there ever be a way that Miller would go back to the kindergarten like we had years ago that was an award-winning program after Totspot as a centralized kindergarten?
Yeah. So I think that would be a bigger discussion. You have, between your different buildings, you have about 16 sections of kindergarten, between junior kindergarten and kindergarten, right? So if you had 16 sections, that would basically take over the entire building. So then the question is, where does preschool and Totspot go? So,
Where was
so
it
if they're
before?
going to go,
It was
to a
back here, I think, wasn't it?
Right. So it's bigger pieces, and you have bridge here. And so I think it would be a larger discussion about that. There are pros and cons to it. I know about how it used to be done. Right now there is space at your elementary levels, but if you were to do something different, at the middle level, I think they made the move this way to do the 5-6 building. They moved the 5th graders out and they brought the kindergartners in and took their spots.
And they closed
So-
Lindbaum.
And
They
closed
Lindbaum at
Right.
the same time.
So, those are big moving pieces, and I think there's a big discussion about what the goals are and everything.
Well, but again, don't forget that was all driven by the deficit.
Sure.
That was the driving force. Otherwise, I truly believe that the 5-6, the Maltby, the Scranton it would continue the way it was
Mhm.
at the time if it wasn't a deficit. But that's what drove those moves.
Sure.
Was that. But again, that was a great program. It had all the kids together in kindergarten. It kind of focused the parents, it got them committed to Brighton area schools. And again, all I can say is I remember it was an award-winning program, and unfortunately, it hit the cuts, right?
The one thing I would say, I'm obviously, I've lived here forever, but I'm new to the district, year 3 for me, is I think that our kindergarten is flourishing because of the staff that we have. I think our kindergarten is really doing well. I think our bigger area of focus for the short term really is that early childhood. And again, I think that we've got great pieces to the puzzle, but I think this preschool education is, if you look at in education research, like perhaps like the greatest intervention, like the most proven intervention in every study that's been done since the 1960s comes back to preschool being the single most impactful intervention that we can do for kids. So I think this is a great spot. I think kindergarten is flourishing. I think we're seeing a lot of great results coming out of it. And I think you saw that this past year. I think preschool is the spot we need to really
Okay,
invest.
but again, my point being, if we're expanding the preschool over there, then there wouldn't be, most likely, we wouldn't be going back to the centralized kindergarten. Would that be the idea at this time?
Unless you had another place that you were going to put.
No,
preschool or
I'm
kindergarten.
asking you guys this. That's why, because I'm all for expanding the preschool and that kind of stuff, don't get me wrong. But again, I don't want to expand and then pretty soon go, oh, gee whiz, well, now we're thinking about the centralized kindergarten. I mean, once
So-
we would do something like this,
I would say like for us, just looking at the numbers, and I
Yeah.
think that's what Matt's trying to, like, wants to give you and talk about, is like when we see a wait list of 4-year-olds waiting for childcare, we'd rather put those 4-year-olds in a preschool program and start instructional, you know what I'm saying? And the wait list is big, so
Yeah.
we would rather find them instructionally into programs, or even kids in childcare that are 4 years old, we'd rather have them in our preschool program and start getting them
Sure.
acclimated to school and have a program that's a little more continuum from start to finish. So I guess in short, right now, I'd say, yeah, we're looking, let's do something with preschool and get ahead of it and help get students kind of on the line, I guess, to education versus having them either not in a school setting at all or waiting in a childcare type facility. And
Okay.
So I guess in short, yes, we're looking at saying, let's go after preschool to see if we can.
compared to going back to that model, fine, okay.
So on these staffing, would we then go to, the certified staff would then be kind of on the union pay scale? Is that would go towards that?
So if I could just answer on this one, preschools are not typically in union contracts. There's very few in the entire state where preschool is in there. The reason why is because of the cost of preschool and the funding that's associated with it. You don't get the funding that you get for K-12. So no, it would be a preschool scale that would be more in line with what preschool people, staff are getting around the state.
As someone who utilized our Miller K program for my son, it really was really good for him. But I would share with you that I think I can take a poll here on this board that every single member here, their kids were in preschool. Okay, so now we have that polling handled. So with that, that's an obvious benefit for families. I'd just say what happened, that you could afford to send them to preschool because you work 7 days a week, or your family allowed you to be able to do that. So I know that some of my kids started at, I think Katie was our youngest at like 2 3/4, and she started and she just took off. She was speaking French by the time she was 4. So the thought process would be that would be a great opportunity for a lot of families to have that same early start for their kids. And right now, how many do we turn down in our current program?
So we have about a little under 400 total between childcare and I guess 397 people were on the wait list when we started this school year. Probably more than half are for childcare for under 3 years old. It's a little bit over half, but there's a lot. The question that I asked that scared me was, I said, do we have kids coming to kindergarten in the Brighton area schools that have never been to preschool? And the answer was an immediate yes. Now that is, we should all be concerned about that. And going to what you're talking about, John, is the state has invested heavily in preschool. Started with the Snyder administration and it continued with Whitmer. Both sides have done this. This Great Start Readiness Program, it has grown and grown and grown, and it is free preschool for people that maybe can't afford it. And we want to make sure that you get funded from the state. So we have met with the county already about expanding that opportunity also. Why not have some more free preschool for people that are going to struggle? Let's get kids into preschool. So that's.
I can share with you that when they closed this school, I was here the night they did it. And it was an absolute tragedy when they closed that kindergarten program. And it was done because of very poor handling of finances. And then when they closed it, the reality was they realized that that would have funded them out of deficit. Remember that, Mr. Thompson? That school alone would have taken this district back to where it needed to be, kind of like shared service, that particular operation. But when they closed it, they were a little short on the sightedness. They moved those kids back into the regular buildings and thought that was a big cut. But really what it was a cut off their own arm on income center from having those students. At one time, I believe we got paid for 2 sections there, full per pupil funding. Is that correct?
You did on half-day kindergarten.
Yeah, we got a half-day kindergarten.
When that went away.
It was amazing. And that was the thought process. They said, well, that's going away. We shouldn't do this. Well, it was still there. So getting back to, if we can come back to a happy medium here, I would support anything we can do to help these kids get started sooner.
But let me ask you, going back to the free money from the state.
Nothing's free.
That, well, I know that, and that's why I was asking this question. Does everybody pay the same rate for their kids to attend preschool?
It's a great question.
That's why I ask it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. So I have received, I have not looked at the chart. We just got this stuff last week, so I didn't look at the chart to see if there's multiple things for the tuition side of it. GSRP obviously is free, but I'm not 100% sure.
Do the teachers get any discount for their kids going there?
The teachers that work on their staff do. The people that are working for Totspot do get a discount.
If their child was in there?
If their child's, or if their children go.
That's different for childcare or preschool too.
Right.
Right, so we have a lot of staff that utilize the childcare part and not the preschool, and I think that's I just want you to know, like that was what we were trying to wrap our heads around, is there is a lot of childcare, and yet the preschool price might be different, right? Because it's half day or it's every other day.
Yeah.
I hear what you're trying, like, we're trying to figure that out, but that's the stuff we're trying to also get down to, is trying to understand those pay structures.
From what
Okay,
I
but-
remember, each class, so at each level there are different rates for those, but everybody in those pay the same. There's not like.
All 3-year-olds pay the
there's
same
not-
thing.
Yeah, there's not.
different.
Okay, so it goes by an age
Yeah, I think
And
each,
how many days?
yeah.
and how many days?
So like if we go 2 days versus 3
Okay,
days.
okay,
versus
but
4 days versus-
there's no one within that group that would pay any different than anybody else. Everybody pays the same. That is from 3-year-olds that go 2 days a week.
Yeah, I think the rate structure is set up that they all pay the same, other than discount for employee.
That works there with their child in their attending.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but then you have GSRP, you have a little bit of that already, and, that's run through by the ISD. And then you also have at least one Head Start classroom. So think of it as different income levels. Head Start is a federally funded preschool situation. So they're your lowest income people get into that.
But again, it's subsidized to the level that everyone else would pay.
I don't know I think Head
Those-
Start's just free. GSRP
Head Start
is free.
and GSRP are basically a separate preschool program run by the county.
Yeah.
They're separate than Totspot, but they pay 0.
Are they at Miller though, or are they?
They're at Miller, correct?
We leased them a couple of rooms.
So coming back, could we get maybe some better clarification or explanation on those fees?
So we'll have a lot of more information. We were just trying to say we're getting under the hood and we're learning
Okay,
more
fine.
about it, and we're working with the staff to improve the program. We're at the very beginning of it. Just kind of wanted to put it on your radar again that we think there's some real room for growth here. We've got really good people, and just want to give you a heads up that we're working on it. We're going to come back to you with a lot more information. Does that sound all right? Okay, thanks. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Anything else on preschool?
Yeah, why don't we buy Limbom back and turn that into a preschool?
Did it get knocked over yet? Yeah.
I'm doing their best to ruin it.
All right. So the next category here is a big conversation that the board is going to have at some point. So tonight, what I was hoping for was not to make decisions about like what necessarily is going to happen next, but maybe to talk more about the process that the board needs in order to decide some timing. Mike's put together some information on when the rates start to fall off and just some options for the board on timing. What we want to do is maybe just have a little bit of dialogue around the when, because I think it's going to be sooner than later that you're going to have to make some decisions about what's next. Mike could walk you through it, but if you look at that last section, this is done by Baker Tilly. If you look at the chart, this chart here, and 2025 is when there's going to be a pretty big drop off. So question mark is, do you try to do something to sustain some funding after that? And that's the dialogue. So jump in, Mike.
Really, the discussion, and we've had it a little bit in the past, is just a discussion on future capital funding and what that looks like. Obviously, the district has gone out for two different bond issues over the last decade, 12 years maybe, but and to the tune of $140,000 basically, $140 million. Sorry, thanks, John. And so, we want to start having that discussion. Obviously the facilities have come a long way in that time. But we also know that no matter what, you always have to continue to work on keeping them up. We've been having this discussion, and it's a discussion the board should continually have, and that's why we're bringing it back, is to take a look at not only this chart, but this is the millage rate to pay off the debt that we currently have. And you'll see that it's been sitting at 7.19 for quite some time now. But we refunded all of that debt when we could, and it made good sense. And what it leaves us with is if we were going to do something, and I'm not saying that you are, because that's a board decision on what we want to do, but if we were, you can see that there's a precipitous drop off around the 25 year, and is that a good time if you are going to look at something to say, look, we're still looking to lower the rates, but we want to do something more to either do some more building or what? I'm not advocating that, but that, or just to maintain the facilities that we have put up. And so strategically, that is a good point to look at right there. So that's one of the things that we wanted to discuss today.
Do you want to just walk up to your timing charts?
So
I think this is
the
helpful.
last
This one right here.
sheet here I put together in portrait mode. I just kind of threw together today just so you could see, what fiscal year is down the side, when we usually approve the rates for this stuff. When we usually, the tax bill is done for debt in December, but I put together approximate election dates and then approximate board resolution timeline, because that has to be done 70 days prior to the election. You have to have board resolution filed with the county clerk. And the reason I just went with approximate dates here is having discussions with our bond attorney today. The legislature is already playing around with maybe changing these election dates. The schools are currently, used to be a school could run an election whenever it felt like it. They did some election reform 8 years ago, maybe 10. So we're down to 3 dates that we can actually use. And so there is currently at least 2 bills out there that are looking to maybe consolidate the May and August votes into maybe a June date and just have one. So that's why I didn't get too specific for you, but just to know that in order to do something, you have to put it to the board 70 days before any election were to happen. And then other things to consider, like if you were to do it in, let's say we decided to get something approved in and around June of 25, that would then not be subject to Headley rollbacks before we even levy it. Whereas if you go a little earlier, even though you haven't levied those things yet, they're still subject to a Headley rollback. So you start losing value on them before they ever go into effect. But it's just a timing thing and more to be discussed. But we wanted to at least reintroduce this topic and at least have some discussion on it.
Well, I think it behooves us to be on top of this like you are right now, and you're thinking about the way. And because we have the ability, actually, if it's done right, to keep lowering taxes, but still being able to pull money from it. But every year that goes by, it's gonna take, my understanding, it'll take more mills to get the same amount of money then all of a sudden it's gonna drop real quick. So
Well,
I think it's like a maintenance almost.
yeah.
feeling.
And really, what you've got, it just depends on what taxable values do. To your statement that it takes more mills, that depends. If as taxable values, if they continue to grow, you need a little bit less millage to actually do it. So it just depends. And that first sheet you have actually shows you the 20-year average of what the property values have done. And you can see those Great Recession years were negatives in there, but you had some really large years in there as well. Those early 2000s before the bust, you had almost a 10% increase one year, which is crazy. But your 20-year average is running at about 2.8. Now, if you were actually thinking about going and looking at a bond again, and again, I'm not advocating that, the Michigan Treasury is going to cap you at 3% or your 20-year average, whichever is lower. And so at this point, there would be the 2.8 that they'd allow for a growth factor in there. I've said before when we had this discussion, I would be more interested in looking at a sinking fund versus a bond issue. I don't see us needing to build a whole lot more stuff. I think a sinking fund is more economical. It's better for the taxpayers, in my opinion. It's more of a pay as you go. And it's, there to help maintain the stuff that we have put up, which is some really great stuff. But I don't see the need necessarily. Not to say we couldn't use it to expand if we needed to do that. But, you have a lot of options. It does come with limitations. But if I were to do a pros and cons, that's probably the direction I would go. But that's a kind of a board decision on where you would like to go, not where I would like to go.
So the question I have, just looking at the timetable that you put together, the rates or the actual millage rates going forward. So let's say, for example, that we wanted to put to a vote a sinking fund that would, you got 5.98% that ends in 2024 and drops to 3.19 in 2025. So if we were interested in proposing a sinking fund to keep it at 5.98 going forward after 2024, we would have to do a resolution by August of 24 for it to be then on the November 2024 ballot. Is that the time frame if you were going to look at doing something like that?
Yes, roughly. Yeah, I believe I got to think that through, Roger, but yeah. I mean, in order to.
It's a pretty big sinking.
I
mean, it'd
pretty
be-
big sinking.
Well, it'd be a big sinking
You
fund,
don't
right?
need one that
And
big.
remember,
I'm just in terms of talking about
Timelines.
this,
yeah,
right?
and sinking, just for you guys' knowledge, sinking funds were reformed about 5 years ago. They used to be, you could levy them for up to 20 years and up to 5 mils. They expanded the scope of what sinking funds could be used for to include instructional technology and security. But in
Buses.
doing so, they reduced it to capping. I don't think they ever added
They've not
buses.
added buses. It's been close several times, but they've never made it on,
Yeah.
in a
But
bill.
they reduced it to 3 mil cap and a limit of 10 years. Now, also keep in mind, and I touched on it earlier, these are always subject to the Headley rollback. Unlimited tax debt for a bond issue is unlimited tax debt that's not
Right.
subject to Headley, but sinking funds do lower. And it's not usually a problem as the millage goes down. It's because taxable values are rising, and usually stay about even. But when you get into a Great Recession situation and they shrink, you actually lose out in
Right.
that situation.
Yeah, we
what's-
don't know what's going to happen
No,
2
you don't-
years
you
from now,
know.
3 years from now,
What's a
but
mill equal right now? How much is a mill?
I didn't bring that. I didn't know where.
Isn't it about 2.5 million? Am I correct?
Probably about 2.8 based on this sheet here. So,
But my point being that you could, not that you would do a 3 mil sinking fund, but you would do, even if you did, if you were to continue the 5.98, you would need basically a 2.7 mil, and it could be approved for 10 years and it would keep it at it actually would keep it at 5.98 for 2 years, and then it would continue to
it would
slide
continue to
down.
fall. Yeah,
Right.
because the sinking fund would stay, but the unlimited tax debt
Correct.
behind it would continue to trail off. And that-
And then you might have to still do a Headley rollback with that.
I've never seen a Headley rollback on a sinking fund, but I
No, but
guess
I
you
mean, if-
could do it.
Yeah, depending on the overall numbers at that point, is
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
We have a different situation though, too, Roger. We have a $2 or $3 million income from our shared services still. And that is not necessarily guaranteed year to year, but for now it's an annual income. We also have an increase in per pupil funding. We have the money without running a sinking fund and without adding any more taxes that is already being generated by this district. Because I haven't seen a program yet of how we're spending all that money, and I've asked for it a couple times. So, we have additional funding, we have per pupil funding, we have sinking fund money. How exactly does that get to students? Now, the idea of a sinking fund is a maintenance budget and to take care of resource, take care of the buildings, take care of our infrastructure around here and everything else. And included in per pupil funding, the design intended per pupil funding, correct me if I'm wrong at all, is including a percentage of that goes to maintenance, percentage of that goes to upkeep. We don't need to add more taxes. If you balance your books right and take care of your house, that money's used to maintain these structures. And the increases that we've seen recently, we have a $100 million budget now. When I started this project, we were out 50 million. We have less students than when I started this project, but yet we have double the budget. Now,
Well,
part
we
of
have
shared services.
less brick and mortar students. We have more
Shared,
students.
I was going to correct myself, but I was just going to add to it. So we have, we're at a $100 million budget. Maybe our budget would be 80 million without our shared service program, give or take. So in that, we've increased our expenses. We have less students. Cost of everything's gone up. But really, where is that $30 million from a couple years ago when I was here? So we'll need to look at those kind of things before you start piling taxes on.
So we're not in a position to advocate for anything today. Really, all we were looking at tonight was to put it on the radar. And if we got, let's say if it's going to be 25, then we needed to get all our ducks in a row. And if it was going to be something like a sinking fund, we should have a 5-year plan of exactly, this is what it would look like. And then you look at it and you say, yeah, we don't need to do that. And that's a decision you would make.
Or if it's a one mil sinking.
Whatever it might be. So if I could ask, I know Mike spoke with our bond counsel on this, was somewhere in the June 25. Is that what he was recommending because of the rollback?
Yeah, he was indicating that was the approximate point at which you wouldn't be.
But before that, like November of 24, there would be,
Yeah.
you would have to?
Yeah.
Everything before that, you would have to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Everything before that, you would have to what?
you'd be subject to having to go back.
Oh,
But if it was August or November of 25, is that enough time?
Yeah, I think we were speaking in generalities because he was assuming that they would end up making it about a June election date, and eliminating that. I think based on what we did 2 years ago, when we had to, what did we do? We had to have an election, a Henry override election in November. And we were able to then file an amended L4029. The taxing units were not happy with us, but we were able to by law do that. So you may be able to go as late as the election a November election in 25 and probably get it on for the December levy, but you're pushing it at that.
So my question is, when does the board need to make this decision for this to happen? Like, when does the board need to really engage in this? Is this a 23-24 discussion, so next school year? Is it the year after that? Like, when is it that the board needs to really hash this out?
I think probably we need to have some much greater discussions in the next year, but I think it's probably in the 24, 25.
So like the second half of the 23-24 school year, this needs to be like a very serious
We need to at
conversation.
least have a discussion on which direction.
Sorry to ask that. I just wanted
No,
to,
that's what I was trying to understand.
that's the biggest thing
timing.
that we wanted to walk away with, was knowing when we need to have all our ducks in a row to help prep and
We'll
discuss.
have more an assessment on what we're gonna need by then, with all this other stuff complete.
Okay.
And have a forecast. So,
Okay.
I've been thinking about this, like, getting on it in 24, I guess, because if it drops to 3.19, you're asking to raise it. If you do it before, you're giving them a drop. It's a much easier sell.
That's my opinion.
Do you want to?
I mean, if you catch it before it falls off the cliff and bring it up, but still bring it down, if you will.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It'll still drop a point or a point and a half. That's an easier thing to sustain for folks.
That's the discussion we've been having, that strategically, that's the sweet spot you want to be in. You're still reducing taxes.
Still reduce.
Without. Otherwise, yes, you're asking for it to go down and then come
And then asking to bring it back up.
Which is harder.
All right, so roughly, we're going to plan, we'll work with Baker Tilly and get all those details out, and we can follow up on that, but we'll shoot for the second half of 2024. No, of the 23-24 school year, next school year, sorry.
Yeah.
So like January of next year, is that 24? Yeah, January of 24, maybe we really start this conversation. So we have, 14 months before we really need to get after this. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think so.
all right. All right, okay. So that was our big question. All right, thank you. That's it for us on our topics. And I know John had the,
You had something you wanted to discuss?
In the world of marijuana business in Brighton, person went up to the Register of Deeds and did some research. That person discovered that there are 10 signed purchase agreements for the city of Brighton. Registered purchase agreements for pot shops in our city limits. There's an indication that there's another 5 that were brought to the council at a given point, not necessarily a discussion out in the hallway, but, so that would be 15 pot shops in Brighton. Now, how many pot shops does one city need? Now, you'll see these buildings secured around town. Some of them are sitting with empty windows, and they're just waiting. So, as we brought up before, we talked about this a little bit. The unlimited pot shops in the city of Brighton and the city limits is not a good program. There were surveys sent out that looked like they were sent out from the city. They're actually sent out from the company that wants to open all these shops. Survey numbers are coming. We'll have them tomorrow, I understand. Somebody's got them back, and take a look at what the survey says from the pot operations mailing to citizens and telling them, by the way, that the income and revenue from legalized marijuana sales will help us with our schools. There's an inventory checklist on this survey, and it says, do you want to use it to fix your roads? Do you want to fix it to help your schools? Do you want to use it to lower your taxes? Obviously, this operation, you can't lower your taxes. That's not going to happen by that method. You may get some community services out of it, but you're not going to lower your property taxes. So that's in the works. So I'd recommend all board members to be aware of that. That if this passes, in my opinion, and I've been pretty right about a lot of this stuff over these years, you will see a change in a community, in the city center, that has never happened in our lifetime, and not for the good. So the other discussion with some people in law enforcement business was talked about what's happened in other communities when these things show up. That hasn't been discussed at all. They can't even deposit their money in banks, from what I understand. So you'll see automatic weapons. You'll see things that are not automatic, but you'll see weapons that would look like that would be used to protect these operations, which can't have automatic weapons, but they sure look like them. So keep that in mind. Is that the look you want for your city? I suggest that. And a couple other items. Are there any questions on that I might answer for anybody? Does anybody have a question? Got a little bit of knowledge on this. I can tell you that the signs put out that say vote no, that approximately 50% of them were swiped, give or take a few days. So, and then, which is not real good when you're trying to run a fair and balanced election. Questions? Once, twice? Okay. Got a mailer in the mail that talked about the investments made in education, and it reminded me about our responsibility. It said the largest investment historically has ever made in public education happened already. It's happening now, last semester and last year, supporting our educational system. So I'm going to ask a question, Mr. Engler, specifically on this increase in funding that this school received. How much was spent on student programs? How much increase in student funding did we get totally in this increase between per pupil funding and these other state incentives that, according to this card I got in the mail, claims it's the largest in history ever?
Right, so over the last 2 years, as far as per pupil funding, it was right around $1,000. That was coming.
Each year.
No.
Total.
Oh,
Base foundation.
Does that included our shared service to students as well? So how much did our district bring in?
1,000 times. So if with shared time, all students together, we have about 8,000
I
FTE.
mean, it's just.
So there's your number.
I'm just giving you a round figure.
So you said, tell me it's 8 million, right?
Billion.
8 million. Okay, so $8 million. Now, when these raises that we just handed out, they were roughly 5 million, give or take, maybe heading towards 6, 5.5. Now, are those raises we just handed out, including the all-in expenses for retirement and health insurance and all that? Were those raises just the net increase in pay? That was in the whole package? Okay.
And it's a 3-year. Remember, it's a 3-year.
Well, it was 5%, and it was 3% and 2, right? 5, 3, 2, is that right? I think it was. And then plus the steps were 5% in the same calendar year. So out of this $8 million, how much of it went to student programs specifically?
Well, don't we ride at about 80%, maybe? 80/20?
I want to know, Ken, my question is how many built new
So
student programs?
20% is our point.
What did we do to spend the available funds that we didn't hand out in increases in pay to everyone?
So are you talking about new programs?
I'm talking about remedial student programs, tutoring. I'm talking about summer school. I'm talking about how much money did we spend on 6,000 students in this district that was given to us according to this little flyer that I've got in huge proportions. more than ever before in history. So what did we do more than ever before in history with all this money to help our students?
We have, I mean, we could put, I mean, we've talked about a lot of this stuff at the board
Yeah,
table,
I'd
but
like to see a budget. though.
there
I'd like to
are,
see what we
I mean,
spent.
extensive programming. I know Dr. Mosier's run, an ever increasing, summer school program and
200
all
kids,
kinds
though.
I mean, so there are a lot of things, a lot of
Here's my
investments
concern.
that
Here's
we've
my
made.
concern. Here's my concern. And it's clear what my concern is. $8 million. How much got to the students? And where's the other money that didn't get to the students? And what we use it for?
Well, what is the figure? I mean, just because the card says we got so much money, I know
We got 8 million.
Well, how much was it?
8 million.
$8 million. That's our district.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's gonna continue for pupil funding for this next cycle, because we're gonna get it, this pump funding will be up again, correct? They haven't lowered it yet. But- So this is still coming,
Here's the early. We're a long way.
but it's just a basic question. So what I'd like to do is, just so we all understand, that's the kind of money that showed up. I'm looking at what benefited students. Right now, all I see is the money went out in raises.
Well, the-
Teachers is benefiting students.
thank you. That's exactly what I was going
But
to say.
you can, I don't disagree that.
And it's
maintaining
not
your
just,
staff-
it's not just thanking your teachers. I would say that for the student experience, the reality is that you take away a building, you can put me with a top flight teacher, put me in a barn, put me in a restaurant, whatever it might be, and I can have a great experience there if I have the best teachers possible. So investing in your teaching staff is an investment in your students. Just keeping that in. That's why 80% of budgets are for staffing. And even when you're adding programming, like we talk about summer school. What is that? Well, you're paying personnel to come in to work and to tutor and to provide services.
I'm not looking
So
for
again,
events,
it's,
man.
I'm,
I'm looking for the numbers. I'm a nuts and bolts person. Tell me what the numbers are, how much you spend. And I'll tell you if I think it's all right. I think that's fair. So you give me the numbers from that board meeting. Tell me exactly how much you spent
Well, I guess
out of that 8 million.
I think part of it is, we unanimously approved the budget, right?
It's not, we didn't know, Roger.
We did.
You didn't know all this money came in
Well, we did,
technically.
it was built into the budget.
But I didn't, again, we had different approvals of different parts of it. I didn't support handing it all out in wage increases. I supported a balance to see that students got a benefit from this increased funding. You can all sit here and tell me all you want, that all of it needs to go to teachers because they're all wonderful. They have signs up all over school that tell us how wonderful they are. They say that they're heroes, by the way. So now, that's my position. It's not an easy position to take, but I'd like to know what programs they've designed, how much we've spent, and how much more we have to spend that we can put into programming that will help these students be more successful. At an untold number of dollars that came in, how much actually got to the plate for the kid? How much? I'm not thinking it's very much by percentage. I don't think you're going to be very happy when you see how much it is. So I'm asking the administration to come up with that number and tell me how much was built into new programming, knowing this increase was coming, what we did with that money to help students. And I'll just leave it with that. That's just one of my things I had. Okay, all right? So I'd like to know that. Is that fair to ask? Okay, thank you. Another one that affects us besides the pot thing, I got another thing in the mail. It's another one of the proposals that affects the school. It affects students, not really the school, it affects students. It talks about who needs to know things, and it's proposal 3. And it talks if the parents should know things or the school should go out and do things without the parent's permission. I mean, my goodness. Since when do we hire out that job to our professional staff and tell them to educate our students, teach them about everything, and determine should they want to have health changes, the teacher should decide that. So I don't know if we can do a board agreement on this one or not, like the marijuana thing, because we're not supposed to be involved in this, but because it directly relates to school, we can surely talk about it. If that particular bill passes, you talk about a burden on the educators in the school system and the counselors and the social workers versus at home.
I mean, is this a topic that we should be discussing during, I mean, it's a statewide campaign ballot.
I would say that the same limitations that you had on the other one would probably apply.
So individual
Here.
can talk about it.
Yeah, and I think at the board table, the idea would be if you were discussing doing a resolution would be one. Or was it resolution, reaffirming a resolution, or three, if you were doing a letter to the editor collectively? Or the three buckets that was the
Well,
advice, if I'm correct on
I
that?
would like to pitch the idea that we do a board consensus on proposal 3, that we say we don't support it. The burden on the school is going to be unbelievable, and it isn't really fair that that would fall in the school. It should be handled in the outside of school.
I don't think that's something the school board should be discussing.
It's going to affect the school a
I
lot.
don't think this is something the school board should be discussing.
So that means you're not going to support a resolution then.
I'm saying I don't think this is something the school board should be discussing.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. In the rental fee charts, it had in there the use of the schools by groups within the school, including the Brighton Education Association. In that, they currently have a room in the school. It's located at B40. It's advertised online, location Brighton High School, around the corner from the main office. Office manager talks about their hours of operation. This is a headquarters of a union office located in a public high school. Now, it's not just a union office. It's the headquarters of a nonprofit supported by the National Education Association, the Michigan Education Association, and the Brighton Education Association, located in a public high school. Now, I see the fee chart. They've been in there for a while. They haven't paid any fees. And technically, they don't belong in the school. Number one, it's a conflict of interest because they endorse candidates for the school board. They select and endorse them. Their main operating business address is our high school. Make sure it says that. It does, yes. And there's a situation, it's called safekeeping of public monies. It falls under the responsibility of our administration and then the school board. So this particular office, here's their constitution, talks about who they are, the affiliated unit of the Michigan Education Association and the National Education Association, and it shall be a nonprofit corporation organized within the state of Michigan. So we house them in their building, and that they endorse candidates. That's the conflict with the campaign finance laws for certain. Now, their bylaws are printed clearly on their website. Recently, I went on our website, and their website interlinked with our website. You could click on a button and enter the Brighton Education Association's website from Brighton Area Schools website like we were partners. Brought that to administration's attention, and they handled it virtually instantly. So that didn't happen anymore. So they haven't paid any rent for this office. Nobody knows how long they've been there. Technically, I understand we don't have a key to it, but maybe we do. I'd like the board's position on this particular situation. If we can take a consensus that they should move out.
I think I'd like to refer to all the information we've gotten from our legal counsel that says we're not doing anything illegal. It's not illegal.
We can't talk about that part because that was in a closed session.
And.
But you got to remember
we
what.
need to look at that information and help us guide it. Now, I am not telling you what my position is as far as the end all be all. I just don't, I don't think the information that you're portraying is 100% right.
What am I missing?
Well, it's the illegal part that I keep having a problem with.
According to
That has
statute.
been clearly described as not the case.
That's not true because they didn't take into account that this was a legal Michigan's not-for-profit corporation running under the National Education. I don't think so. But
Look, we don't need to debate what our lawyers for the district did or didn't take into consideration. They're our district's lawyers.
That's
right?
fair. So in this.
Let's not go there.
So let's move to this one. So it says right here, according to Michigan Constitutional Act 1963, based on Article 7, unlawful expenditures by a governmental unit, contributions or appropriations which are not specifically authorized by the Constitution or the state statute cannot be authorized regardless of the worthiness of the cause. Period. Examples of such prohibited expenditures where there is no contract for specific service to lawful wards, WARDS, or functions of the local unit have been negotiated and are as follows. Contributions to churches, veterans, nonprofits. Clearly in the state statute, it's against the law.
Okay, we're not going to debate the information that our lawyers looked at and gave us specific advice on. And with all due respect, Mr. Conley.
You're being fair. I got it. Okay, I'll finish up.
Thank
So in that, that's what the statute says. Now you move on to this next one, which I think should be very important to all board members, especially the attorneys. The Michigan Penal Code, it's 750.478. Willful neglect of a duty of a public officer or a person holding public trust or employment. Quote, penalty. When any duty is or shall be enjoined by law upon any public officer or upon any person holding any public trust or employment, every willful neglect to perform such a duty where no provision shall have been made for the punishment constitutes a misdemeanor. So now you need to find out if it's legal or not. None of us can allow an illegal act to take place under our watch. I think
I can venture to say there isn't anyone up here that is willing to take on.
I disagree with that. Like I said, you guys, like I said, if you know, but now you know, and it'll be up to you guys to decide what to do. So thanks for your time on that.
All right.
Hold on, one more thing. Liz, we have no more coming in tomorrow?
So are you talking about, I did let Dr. Outlaw in.
Yeah, I'd like to know what's transpired.
So what, this is the company that was coming in on the 20, and Gavin Johnson, principal, let him know about it. And I believe they were in contact with,
Mr. Conley organized the whole thing,
okay, I believe they were in contact with
as
them.
usual.
So did they contact you?
Well, Elmore has. I arranged for all.
No, I know that.
Did
No.
anybody else contact me? No.
So I believe the facility is being used.
Good. Why we're visiting at 4 o'clock?
That's how when that goes. I think there's something scheduled at 5:30.
We're only going to be in there an hour. What we're discussing, you guys will bring into the loop. One of our companies is one of the industry education partners, which we've worked with for years. Is, and I believe has 3 to 5 of our students that work for them full-time now. And also put someone through engineering school and paid for it. Their president asked to come out. We had spoken on the phone and we made arrangements to bring the president, vice president, and their operations. Taking choices to keep such. And so what Bill had done is called back to administration and said, well, maybe get some of the kids that might want to meet him and look at potential job opportunities for the students. So he was just following up on whether they had done anything to get students involved so they could get a potential opportunity. But I can share with you, it's a great operation, and they've also sponsored a robotics team, but they've taken our students, for instance, I went over to, I think we've talked about this over the years, but I went to their conference room one day at the headquarters, and they awarded one of our students a 4-year college scholarship and a 4-year internship, and many others that have left Brighton schools now. So it's nice stuff. Slowly. So do you have any students coming? Ms. Mosher, Dr. Mosher?
So I did, I was there when Mr. Johnson emailed. I know he emailed, obviously, at Florida about his resume to the counselor, so that this was happening. So that's what
So I think it'll be fine either way. They're not expecting students, really what they're seeing. They were there for the groundbreaking as well. If you guys recall, they had a representative there. So I think it's another great opportunity to show what we're doing.
Good.
Thank you.
The subject attorney-client privilege, I move that this board go into closed session pursuant to section 8H of the Open Meetings Act to review confidential written attorney-client communications.
All right, we have a motion by Stahl. Any support?
Support.
Support by Ms. Mitchell. Be a roll call vote. Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Stahl?
Yes.
Dr. Krebs?
Yes.
Mr. Trombley? Mr. Conley? Myers, yes. That passes 6-0. All right, we will be moving into closed session. That is the last item on our agenda before the conclusion of our meeting this evening. So we are adjourned into closed session.
1:31.
You can,
Do you want to leave
come back up
the
here.
camera on? Or can you want to leave the camera on until, or?
I mean, there's nothing further
There's nothing
for the
further.
agenda, so he can shut the
Yeah.
camera off when we
And then
stay
we can
here.
just go close.
Yeah.
We can close it down there. Just gotta get all my paperwork.
Yeah, we'll
Okay. He's gonna turn it off and we can stay.